Hey, it's Dave from Doing Things with Dave. And today I wanted to talk about what's finally done. So today is Tuesday, the 15th of April, 2025, tax day here in the US. It's also a couple days since I've gotten back from my epic Panama Canal cruise. It was 15 full days, technically 16 based on the when you get off, when you get on. But today I wanted to share a little bit about what I thought, what I did, and then kind of end this video with a bit of, is taking a Panama Canal cruise something that you should do? So I got home Sunday night, about midnight, and I've spent the last day and a half catching up on work. I had a very busy work day yesterday, but also doing laundry. And well, a lot of laundry is done. A lot of laundry still needs to be folded. If you know, well, you know. But let's talk a little bit about the basics of this cruise. So I was on the NorwegianJoy. I sailed from Miami and I went to Los Angeles. Like I said, it was technically 16 days, 15 full days. We left Miami on Saturday, March 29th, and we docked in Los Angeles Sunday morning, April 13th. A little overview of the cruise. It had 6 sea days, 6 ports, 5 different countries, 2 continents, and of course, we did a full transit of the Panama Canal from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Now, starting from the beginning, boarding day. Very easy. What I did is I flew down the morning before, so Friday the 28th. I took a 6 a.m. flight out of Newark. I was able to check into my hotel by 9 a.m. or 9:30, which was phenomenal because Friday was a work day. So I was able to get a lot of work done, kind of set up the fact I was going to be out for the next 2 weeks and make sure there were no loose ends. And in the event someone had the ability to get in touch with me via WhatsApp, that sort of thing. So all good there. Now, as far as the hotel, I stayed out at the airport at one of the airport hotels. I would probably stay there again, just simply from its convenience of getting off the airplane and getting to the hotel and then taking an Uber the next morning. Speaking of the next morning, Saturday the 29th, which was boarding day, I had a 10 to 10:30 show up time. We got to the port around 10:15. By the time we got through the line of cars, it was 10:30. Quickly into the port, or excuse me, the terminal, scanned my passport, did my security check, and had my key card, and then had to wait about 15 minutes until I boarded. Ultimately, I was on the ship by about 11:30, 11:40, and it was super easy. Was really excited to finally get on the ship. And again, this is the 3rd time I've been on the NorwegianJoy, so I really knew my way around. And I decided to go have lunch at the American Diner. Now, the American Diner is up on the 16th deck. It's in the back of or aft of the ship. It's a complimentary restaurant that serves things like burgers and sandwiches. It's got a few diner-style dishes like a pot pie and a few other things. A couple years ago, the American Diner was a specialty restaurant, but now it is complimentary, which is great. It's only generally open for lunch. Some ships, I've also been able to get a breakfast buffet. They do have an upcharge for milkshakes, but other than that, it's a great place to have a quick bite. It's kind of open-aired, so it's a little cooler than, say, being completely in the outside or the inside, depending on what you like the best. As far as the rest of the day before we left, walked around the ship a little bit, got to see some of the things that I know I like to do, got my Wi-Fi set up, and I did have unlimited but non-streaming Wi-Fi. Ironically, I couldn't get to YouTube, but I could get to places like Instagram and TikTok and actually stream short-form videos, but no YouTube under any sort. Is what it is, no complaints, still had a great time. But it was nice to be able to connect on a daily basis, stay in touch with my family, and things like that. Our room was available around 2:30. Now, originally when I booked the cruise, I had booked an inside stateroom, but did submit for an upgrade or bid for an upgrade, and I got one. So I ended up on the 12th deck, port side, cabin 12180, which was just forward of the forward stairs. So maybe 6 or 8 rooms there. Great location. One of the interesting things about stairs is I took the stairs almost exclusively. Only maybe 3 times did I take an elevator. I'll touch more on that towards the end of the video, but I definitely did get a lot of steps and stairs in, so that was a good thing. Okay, sail away kind of was a bit of a bust, and it wasn't the ship's fault. It was the weather wasn't so great. It kind of got windy, kind of got a little blustery, a little bit of rain. So I actually watched sail away mostly from my balcony. I had picked up a drink from Sugarcane, so a nice jalapeno cucumber mojito, and watched as we sailed out the channel. I've sailed away from Miami quite a few times, so I know kind of what to see and look for. So it was a nice departure. Did see this really cool house. Hopefully I'll put a picture of it that some of the folks were working on, but it was a really cool shot of a very futuristic house over part of the bay, and definitely something that probably was a little expensive, but it was cool to see. Okay, so once we sailed away, we settled into a couple of sea days. Our first 2 sea days basically got us from Miami down to Cartagena, Colombia. And the first few days were really just settling in. Now, this is a 2-week cruise. What was great about it, I had the chance to really relax. I knew I was going to be gone for 2 weeks. I was prepared for that. So unlike, say, other cruises where it takes a couple days to seem like you're going to relax, and then all of a sudden you're back in port, I knew from jump that this was a super epic vacation, and I felt relaxed very quickly. But the first few sea days were really just exploring the ship again, doing loops on deck 16 or deck 8, which is the waterfront. Deck 8, the waterfront, goes around the ship 3/4 of the way. It doesn't go around the bow, but you can cut across at the forward stairs and get some really nice walking loops in. About 4 loops of the waterfront ultimately is approximately a mile. So I did a lot of that. And certainly a lot of people did as well. Plus the waterfront has a bunch of great places to sit and relax, which I certainly took advantage of. When I was exploring, some of my favorite places were Malting's District Brew House and the Wine Bar. And I did do, on the first couple sea days, both a wine tasting with cheese as well as a beer tasting. Both were enjoyable. They cost about $20, and it's a fun experience. You get a little bit of knowledge, you have a little bit of laughs. I also did a wine tasting on another sea day. That was a black glass tasting. That was really cool. I'm actually going to do a whole video on that because I really felt like that was a good experience, but more to come there. So anyway, our first port stop after a few days at sea was Cartagena, Colombia. Now, I had never been to Colombia. I've never been to South America, and this was a neat trip. I booked an excursion to see the fort as well as the colonial walled city. It seemed like everybody booked that excursion, even though it was under a lot of different names, because we kept seeing the same buses, the same people from the ship at every little spot we went to. But I really did enjoy this excursion. We got to see the fort for about 15 minutes. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go up to it, but we did get to see it, take some pictures. Then we went to a shopping district. Then we got into the old city itself. One key takeaway of the old city, I thought, was it reminded me very much of New Orleans, the French Quarter specifically, based on the architecture, 2 to 3 story buildings, bright colors, narrow streets, and balconies. I enjoyed our tour guide. She was great. Jenny was her name, keeping us where we needed to be. The only sort of negative takeaway were the vendors were incredibly aggressive. And I get it. They're trying to make money, and I appreciate that. They're trying to sell souvenirs, and tourism is certainly important for a lot of countries, especially port areas. But they often didn't just go away after 1, 2, 3, 4 no's. I even had one guy who was wearing a hat. He was trying to sell a hat, and I said, "No, thank you." And he yelled at me some, I think, curse word in my ear. It was a little disconcerting, but at the end of the day, all good. I enjoyed Cartagena. And one neat thing about the end of the port area is before you walk back to your ship, once you get dropped off of the bus, they have a big bird aviary that you walk through. So all sorts of peacocks, macaws, flamingos, and some other types of birds. It's all free. You get to walk through it. They have souvenir stands that you can get a beer or soda as well. But it's a neat little area to finish the trip. And certainly if you didn't want to take a tour, you could certainly get off, explore that a little bit, feel like you had a good time. So definitely props to the Cartagena, Colombia port and the whole experience. Okay, so the next day, once we left Cartagena, it was time to do the actual crossing, the Panama Canal, the thing that I was most excited about and have been talking about for the last few weeks. If you've seen any of my videos before this, I have really been excited about this. So I want to kind of think about the Panama Canal in three key phases. The first is the locks, the second is Gatun Lake, and then the third is the cut, Gaillard or Colbert. They've got a couple different names for it, but kind of outline it from each of those experiences. So the first was the locks. Now we are a very big ship, so we had to go through the new locks. When I booked this cruise, I didn't know that there were two sets of locks, but there are. The ones that were came online in 1915, the originals, and then in 2016, much bigger, wider, longer locks were commissioned and can handle much bigger ships. So our ship was over 1,000 feet long, over 160,000 tons. So we had to go through the bigger locks. But it was great because we got up close and personal. The ship was wonderful. They opened up the bow. They had tons of viewing spaces in the stern, an observation lounge. The crew was wonderful in helping to point you where to go, where to see. So I went all over the place. But my favorite spot actually was on deck 7. Deck 7 is an partially open deck. It's where the lifeboats are. It's often where you board the ship on embarkation and debarkation day. You can certainly plenty of room to walk, but I did a lot of watching the locks themselves from deck 7 because we were parallel to the ground before we got elevated up. So it was kind of, you got really close, and I enjoyed that, being as close as possible to the lock system itself. So that was great. We did the 3 locks for Agua Clara, which is the first set of locks on the Atlantic side. And then we actually anchored in Gatun Lake. Now, Gatun Lake is the man-made lake that was created when they built the Panama Canal. It's what powers the lock system. Really interesting fact, there are no water pumps in the locks. It's all based on gravity. How I learned that was the ship actually had a guy for the Panama Canal Authority who was narrating throughout the day, giving facts, figures, details, explaining in very specific terms, but easy to understand, what was happening, why it was happening, what was next, how you can become a pilot for the locks, lots of details on the ships, the locks themselves, history of the canal. So it was a fascinating day, and he was on the ship loudspeaker, so it was great to just be able to hear and understand as we're doing something, he's explaining it. So I thought that was phenomenal. I know a lot of the cruises do that, but I wanted to call him out as just being a phenomenal communicator, and it really added to the value of the day. In any case, we anchored in Gatun Lake. Now, while we were in Gatun Lake, we anchored there primarily because it's the end of the dry season. So the water levels are low, but there are some tides to account for. And because of how high our ship is, we had to wait until later in the evening to get under the Bridge of the Americas. So they basically held us at Gatun Lake for about 4 or 5 hours. This was fine. It was a mini sea day. Everyone relaxed. A lot of people went back, took a nap, had a leisurely lunch, went to the pool. It was great because you weren't going to miss anything. For me, I walked around. I watched some of the ships passing by. I'll put some video of that up now. And I thought it was great just to be able to see how immersive and big these ships are, as well as what the Gatun Lake looks like. In any case, by about 1:32 p.m., we were cleared. We pulled up our anchor, and then we made our way across the rest of Gatun Lake, and we had a couple of key things. First, we got to Gamboa, which is sort of like right before you get to the cut, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that is where they have all the dredging equipment. They have some of their construction equipment because they constantly are dredging to make sure that any silt or sediment that settles on the bottom, they address, because you got big ships and you need to make sure that they can get through regardless of water level. And there's one crane that actually was built during the 30s from Germany, and it's was one of four, and I think it's the last one, or maybe one other still is in Europe, but it was massive. And at first I was videoing one that I thought was it, and then we saw the real one, which is hopefully now up on the screen, and it was really big. So that was cool. After we passed Gamboa, we got into what's called the Gaillard Cut, and this is really a canal. It's about 650, 700 feet wide. It can handle two ships going in different directions at any given time. But this is where we saw some cool things. So we saw some crocodiles, which was pretty cool. We saw a prison, and it actually turned out to be the prison that Manuel Noriega spent some time in before, or towards the end of his life, after he had been deposed as the dictator of Panama in the late 80s and early 90s. We passed through the Continental Divide, which is what links the Andes to the Rockies. To me, this was so cool. And while the mountain or the rock structure isn't all that big, it still felt something significant. We passed under our second bridge. This is the Centennial Bridge. It also covers part of the Pan American Highway, similar to the last bridge, the Bridge of the Americas. But this was really cool. And then we made it into the second set of locks, the Cocoli locks. Very similar to the Agua Clara locks that we went through on the Atlantic side. The only difference was we got there as it was getting dark. So we got to see the lock operation from dusk till dark, which I thought was also really cool. Now, while we were waiting to go under the Bridge of the Americas, the last of the three bridges, the first bridge also over the canal, we saw a giant crocodile swimming. And hopefully the video up now will show you what it looks like. This is from deck 8, so we're probably 40 or 50 feet from the water at this height. And as you can see, this thing was massive. Now, we will see a lot more crocodiles on the rest of this this cruise, but this was like, wow, the amount of sea life, wildlife that we saw on the cruise was truly amazing. So after we got released, we went under the bridge and docked at the cruise port in Panama. Very great, enjoyable day. Highly loved just about every moment of it. It wasn't fast-paced, but at the same time, it was such a cool experience to see this massive modern wonder of the world. So our next day was actually in Panama. We had docked at the Pacific Coast Cruise Terminal, Fuerte Amador. It's brand new. It was built just about 2 years ago. And it's beautiful, albeit sort of empty, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But my second excursion was to go see the Miraflores locks, so the old locks on the Pacific side, then visit the Miraflores Visitor Center, and then tour part of the old U.S. military bases, and do some shopping, see downtown Balboa, and it kind of get a little bit better sense of Panama. Tour started fine. We drove out to the locks. It was very crowded. Turns out the visitor center is mostly closed, which was not ideal. So a lot of the things that were part of the planned tour were not going to be available. Now, it turns out it's been closed for a while under refurbishment. Bit of a miss. It would have been nice to know that. Also, like some of the other, or like Cartagena, where even though people are on different tours, this was a main component of it, it was quite crowded. It was also quite crowded with locals, which simply meant the overflow viewing area was extremely crowded. Our guide was not a great communicator, and there was some disconnect on what we were supposed to do, but we ended up getting about 5 minutes to see the ship in the lock, which was okay, is what it is. That's part of cruising, but you got to deal with that. What was frustrating, though, is we were then supposed to see a movie, an IMAX movie, narrated by Morgan Freeman, which turned out to be very good. Part of our group didn't get into it, though, so the guide made the right decision to make sure the rest of the group got to see it, but didn't communicate to those of us who did. So there was a handful of us who thought the bus left us. It took us almost 45 minutes to track down our guide. Stressful, frustrating, annoying. It is what it is, but it was very disappointing that we didn't get that good communication we thought we were going to get left, or thought we had been left, and it soured the experience. The rest of the excursion was a very quick drive through the old fort, and we got dropped back at the ship about 2 hours ahead of anyone else who was on the same type of excursion on a different bus. Didn't do any shopping, didn't get to see anything. Some of the tours even went over the Bridge of the Americas. Regardless, I did get on the ship, talk to NCL guest services about the experience. They did end up crediting some of the excursion, which I thought was the right thing to do. And then I got back off the ship because we had plenty of time and I walked around for a little while. Only disappointment, I didn't get to get a actual souvenir. I buy my magnets. I got a magnet from every single port except here. Why? Because as I mentioned earlier, the cruise port's very new. It's very nice, very modern. Doesn't have any shops in it. They had a couple of small kiosks. The kiosks were mainly selling alcohol, which is kind of like we're on a ship. We need a lot of alcohol. Great, you can buy some here, but they weren't selling anything that was what you might want, at least what I wanted as a souvenir and a magnet. So a little disappointed, but look, it is what it is. I'm not complaining. You get what you get sometimes, and getting upset doesn't help. So Panama was not as exciting as I thought, but the canal was epic. So I kind of chalked it up as a win. And, got back on the ship, had a really relaxing afternoon. One interesting thing is there was lots of flotsam from the Pacific up against the rocks. It kind of looked like an old seafood restaurant, with all the decorations they have. And there were tons of birds, lots of pelicans, more crocodiles. So it was kind of nice waiting to leave and go from there. So when we did leave, we had another sea day. And this sea day was up to Costa Rica. And then we basically had Costa Rica and Guatemala. So Costa Rica first, I had a great excursion, although there were some bumps in it. What we did is went to Antigua. Now, the excursion guide said it was about 90 minutes. It was more like 2.5 hours. We had a little traffic, but that traffic was the type of traffic you normally are going to hit. So felt a little bit like this is a miss. I was on a ship excursion. I wasn't at all worried, though, but it just was a longer day. Antigua, though, is a beautiful colonial city that is about 5,500 feet of elevation, nestled between 3 active volcanoes. It's in a valley. It is stunning. 1- and 2-story buildings, all sorts of bright colors, amazing restaurants, bars, hotels. It definitely felt like a place you want to spend a week in. Turns out it's where a lot of destination weddings happen now from the U.S. People fly down there, they spend a few days and have a great time. The highlight of this tour, though, was we went to the Antigua Brewing Company brewery and had 4 beers along with 4 paired bites. Some ceviche, a enchilada with beets, a pork dish, and then some plantains that were fried in a mole sauce. Phenomenal. Turns out this brewer, he's been around the U.S. He's been to some breweries that I know where I live. Twin Elephant, if you know, you know, which was so cool. Had a great time. And the views at the roof deck were stunning because you got to see around the city. Antigua is a place I would go back to. I would want to spend 2, 3, even 4 days there. It's also the heart of the Guatemalan coffee production area, as well as where a lot of jade comes from. So neat little area, beautiful city. Bus ride notwithstanding, it was really good. It was my second favorite excursion because I skipped a little. The first place we went to before we went to Guatemala was actually Costa Rica. And Costa Rica was my actual favorite. Costa Rica, I did a crocodile tour. We got on the bus. Now, interesting, when we were in Costa Rica, getting on the bus was in a very industrial port because our ship was too big. So what we had to do was board right next to the ship. Our guide actually had a hard hat on and a safety vest. And from getting on the bus, it was about an hour-long bus ride to a what looked like a plantation or a farm. There were a lot of cows there. And we boarded some boats on the Tarcales River, and we spent about 2 hours looking at crocodiles and all sorts of birds. Eagles, osprey, pelicans, egrets, herons. Saw about 7 or 8 big crocodiles, including one that was massive. They have different names for them, but this was one of the named ones. I don't remember if it was Mike Tyson or Osama or somebody else, but they have names for these guys. We also saw some iguanas. We saw some monkeys. It was just a phenomenal experience. The guide was great, constantly pointing out things, making sure that everybody on the boat, and it was about 25 or 30 people on the boat max, all got to see everything, got to take pictures, got to take videos. So top notch. Now, after we left that, we drove to a small souvenir stand. They had some live dancing. They had some fruit. Yeah, had some Costa Rican coffee. And then buy your souvenir. And of course, I happened to grab a beer as well. So Costa Rica and Guatemala were really, really strong. My number 1 and number 2 favorite excursions. Cartagena probably 3, and then Panama a very distant 4th. But once we boarded the ship, and ultimately in Guatemala, because I flip-flopped here, we had 2 sea days to go to get up to the Mexican Riviera. Now, those 2 sea days were interesting. They were typical sea days, except the first one was a really rough day. About 4 a.m. I woke up, the ship was definitely moving. Now, I don't get seasick. I did not get seasick. I didn't even get queasy, but you could feel it. You could hear the hangers bouncing around in the closet. We had a little side to side as well as a little up and down motion. And around 7 a.m. I got up. The vomit bags were out. All the outside decks were closed. It was rough for a while. And then, it calmed down because the captain had said by about 2 p.m. it should get a little bit better. And it certainly did. The wind died down, the sea got a lot calmer. And so for about 4 or 5 hours, we had a bit of a rough patch, but other than that, it was fine. And the rest of the cruise, I want to say from start to finish, other than a little rain in Miami when we left and kind of a bit of a cold day when we were heading into Los Angeles, weather could not have been better. Calm seas, beautiful sun, warm temps. It was great. Sea days, though, generally, it's a relaxation day. Maybe take a nap, maybe take a walk. We had 2 of them, stayed out late one night, had a few extra drinks and maltings and a few other places, but had a really good time. And then on the next sea day, I was walking early and actually got to see a dolphin. And I saw the dolphin porpoise a few times, got a short video of it, which was to me super cool. So again, lots of wildlife on this trip. Seeing dolphins was just fantastic. I've seen them a few times on the Jersey Shore and in a few other places in the wild, but seeing them on a cruise ship 100 miles off the Central American coast was special to me. So, okay, after our CAs, we had just 2 more ports, Mexican Riviera ports. So the first one was Puerto Vallarta. We sailed into Puerto Vallarta, beautiful sunrise. I did not have an excursion plan, but I knew what I wanted to do because I had seen some videos on YouTube that talked about how easy it was to get to the beach. So once you leave the ship and you walk through the departure area, there's a big sign that basically points you either to the town or to the flea market. Go to the flea market. On the left side of the flea market, there's a path that you can get to the beach. Don't have to pay for anything, and it's great. Then you have a couple miles of beautiful beach. So that's what I did. Walked along the beach for a while, had a great time, saw a little bit of wildlife, a puffer fish. I saw some fish jumping, saw some fish swimming, including some bigger ones. I couldn't figure out what they were. And then, of course, I saw another crocodile, and this was a big one. The big sign says, be careful of crocodiles. And then all of a sudden I see one. First I saw him in the water, then I saw him trying to go up and attack the birds. He didn't. Well, I was there, get the birds, but that was another really cool thing. So again, I walked along the beach for a little while, got in to swim just for a couple minutes in one of the calmer areas, walked back to the flea market, stopped and had a couple of beers and some fresh guacamole. It was delicious. It was just nice and relaxing. Then I got back on the ship. Main reason is I had a specialty dining plan that night. I went to Le Bistro, which is one of the, I think, top of the specialty dining restaurants that Norwegian has. It's French. I had a phenomenal filet and some other great things. And I'm going to do a longer video on all the food. But that was a really good evening in Puerto Vallarta. And then our last day was Cabo San Lucas. I managed to capture the famous arch on sail-in. The only sort of pushback I have on Cabo was the fact that it's a tender port. and we didn't have a whole lot of time there. I didn't book an excursion, so I didn't get off the ship until about 9, spent about 2.5, 3 hours walking around. The port area was nice, but not overwhelming. It's definitely a place I'd like to visit and spend a few days at. A lot of wildlife there, saw some seals and sea lions, had a nice margarita, and then tendered back to the ship. And then basically got ready for the final sea day and home. Now, interesting, we left Cabo at about 2 p.m. And as soon as we got back into the Pacific Ocean proper, the temperature dropped like 30 degrees. It was about 80 degrees in Cabo, 85, and it became like 50, 55 degrees in the ship, which was chilly to say the least. But that last sea day actually was perfect because it was a little on the colder side. It wasn't raining or windy or anything. It was just a little chilly. I got packed. I relaxed a little bit more, took a nice long nap, and hung out with a few friends that I'd made on the ship. And then we landed, or docked, I should say, in LA early on Sunday the 13th. Getting off the ship was very simple. We actually got off a little bit early, and then had a longer wait in customs. It was almost 90 minutes, primarily because they do face-to-face screening versus the biometric screening that you're seeing in a lot more places. I think it's because of the number of ports we went to. So instead of maybe a 15 or 20 minute wait, it was almost 90 minutes, but I was prepared for that. The ship was communicating that. So I was basically cleared customs by 10, got an Uber to the airport. It was about a half an hour drive, and then got a 1 p.m. flight home. One interesting thing on the flight home, we did do some extra holding over Western Pennsylvania for about an hour and a half. I'll put a picture up. As you can see, we're doing loops. Ultimately, I got home at about 11:45 on Sunday the 13th. Had a great night's sleep and got back into it. So very quickly, the thing I wanted to touch on, I know this has been a very long video, and if you've made it this far, thank you. And maybe if you like these types of videos, subscribe or certainly like it. But the question I had posed is, should you take a Panama Canal cruise? My answer is, I think yes. I loved it. There's a couple things you want to think about, though. One is it's a point-to-point, so you're going to need to think about travel arrangements on one or both sides, right? So if you don't live in Miami or LA, as an example, you're going to need to get to both of those. So you just got to account for that. Maybe when you dock in LA, instead of flying home that day, spend the day in LA and fly home the next day or next 2 days. Think about that. Number two, the crowd's going to be older. I was one of the younger people on the ship, if I'm being honest. Very few kids, which was fine, but a lot of canes, walkers, mobility devices. It's an older group. Totally fine. And that's the main reason why I didn't take the elevator, because waiting for the elevator was longer. These folks need priority for the elevator. So take the stairs when you can. The other thing is the vibe might be a little different. It's not nearly as much as a party ship as, say, a 5-day or a 7-day Caribbean cruise. Doesn't mean that people aren't going to have a good time. And certainly there were a lot of parties, a lot of people doing stuff. But all in all, it's a slightly more relaxed. People eat a little bit earlier. So like if you want to eat a little bit, like getting a reservation at 8 is going to be a lot easier on this ship compared to maybe a different cruise. But it's also a great time to relax. And like I said, within a day or two, I was completely relaxed. I felt really like I was getting the vacation I wanted, the experience I wanted. I don't necessarily know that I would immediately say I'm going to do another Panama Canal cruise, not because I didn't enjoy it, but I've seen it and I want to see some other things. But at the same time, when you go through it, it's just a day that you've got a smile on your face. There's a bit of awe, a lot of excitement. So in any case, Cruise 11 is now done. Panama Canal, check it off. Had a just truly amazing time. It's the best cruise I've had for lots of reasons. So what's next? Next few weeks, I'm going to share a lot more of the day in, day out stuff, kind of deep dive into moored sea, the restaurants, the bars, try to do a bit more on each of the ports and the excursions I've done. Talk about a lot of the wildlife we saw, because we did see a lot. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the sea.